extremely fun. It's Sunrise with Craig Froenig right here on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or go to kcmxam.com. Join in the conversation by calling 541-772-8255. Sunrise, where it matters what you think.
Good morning, everybody. 8 minutes after the hour, 54 degrees. It's going to be a hot one today. I mean, if you consider 90 degrees as being hot, it's hot, okay? Beautiful. Love it. Want to get to the lake. Want to get up into the mountains. But I don't get to do that today. Got to stay and work and do all that I do. And I'm pretty happy to have in the studio this morning Elise Higley. She's the director of Our Family Farms Coalition. You can go to ourfamilyfarmscoalition.org on the website. Pretty informative related to the measure 15-119. And this has turned into a pretty big deal. We knew this was going to get hot, Elise, and we knew because it was going to split farmers, it was going to split the community in relation to a standing of whether they are for it or against it. And then the next thing is everyone understanding what it really means. But Elise, thanks so much for coming in this morning and of course report in the paper. How are you doing? Are you holding up okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I just want to clarify too, is I don't really feel like it's splitting farmers. I really feel, looking at our supporter list, that there's, over 150 farms signed on. There are less than a handful of individual farmers growing GE.
Right.
I think that some farmers may be confused, feeling like their property rights, everybody wants to grow what they want to grow.
Yeah,
but once they really get the information, they realize this is what the yes side is saying as well. It's the patent laws and the contamination issue that's going, that's getting in the way of people being able to grow what they want to grow.
Right. And I've talked about this. We had the Farm Bureau crew in this last week, and it's a good dialogue because it's kind of like, okay, if you, coming from the anti-GMO and the family farms measure, saying yes on that in order to stop folks that want to grow what they want to grow on their property, who has the right to tell the other what to grow or what not to grow on their property? And that's never happened before. Mm-hmm. So this is a shock to the system. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, this patented seed came out just 17 years ago,
right.
1996.
So, I mean, I feel for the farmers because it's not that they're being sold a dog that doesn't hunt, but it's got some criteria behind it that we don't understand.
Right.
And so the farmers, I mean, I'm talking nationally. Our farmers are some of the best in the world, if not the best in the world of what they do. And they've been sold this by chemical companies. They've got this patented seed that, and we've had this amazing biotechnology science. She's actually a scientist she's the international director of the biotechnical division at UC Davis, Dr. Martina Newell-McLaughlin, and she's doing some great things and trying to reduce chemicals and those kind of things. But then you get back into the Roundup Ready.
On the field, the reality of outside the science lab.
Yeah, and you get back into farming and what farmers are faced with and the cross-pollination and the pollution of the seed, and what did one of our callers call it yesterday? How it's going to not infect everything, but the cross-pollination is going to get into everything. There's nothing you can do about it.
Contaminate.
Yeah, the contamination. It'll be complete. I mean, there won't be anything that won't be contaminated.
So let's look at some of the top facts that the Citizen Review Board came across.
And you were working
yesterday
on that, and then this just came out in the paper today. But this is amazing because it looks to me like they shortened the article and took the top 10 bullets, right, and put them into 6 of their own.
Well, what the Citizens Initiative Review, their goal was to come up with the, top 10 findings after 3.5 days of deliberation, hearing from, opposing side who didn't show up. So they had to, the Citizens Initiative Review, Healthy Democracy had to come up with their own panelists. And then
why is that? Why don't they didn't show up, do you think?
Well, I think there are very few people locally who are able to speak about the measure and that really care enough to come and talk about it. So we don't have any local farmer who has come out to talk about it except for the TV ad we all know about.
Right. And so then the next thing would be is the Farm Bureau. Puts them in a tough spot because they represent all farmers, organic, GE, GMO, anti-GMO.
They say they do. Definitely their standing on opposing this measure was not voted by the members, that's for sure, because there's a lot of members of the Farm Bureau that are actually supporting this measure on the yes vote and very disappointed with the Farm Bureau's stance. But again, the Farm Bureau is funded, 28% of their funding is from Monsanto chemical company, so they obviously have to stay true to their funders.
And it's a national platform, and once again, you look at a model for the American farmer, and they've been sold this mechanization, lower the costs, go into the patented seed. Seemed like it'd been researched and developed, and it seemed okay, and those kind of things. Now, of course, you've got GMO products that are now all of a sudden countries don't want to import them from the U.S.
64 countries have regulations on GMOs currently.
Yeah, exactly.
So the findings, basically, they came up, the Citizens Initiative Review. Well, we were really happy. I mean, I definitely have to say that I was skeptical at the beginning, thinking of, 20 random people picked, throughout the county. And the first day, it seemed, with all the onslaught of, campaign material and misleading information, that it was, I was wondering what was going to happen.
So this is like a jury, a 20-person jury randomly picked.
Right.
And you were afraid, since they'd already heard and seen all the evidence, basically, that it wasn't going to bode well.
Right. And so, we found after, you take all the drama, misinformation out of the equation and look at the facts. Let's read their top finding was 15119 prohibits growing of genetically engineered crops in Jackson County. That's a given, right?
Well, that's the definition of the of the ordinance.
Right. So this is what they found to be true and factual. It protects family farmers from serious risk that their crops will be contaminated by genetically engineered crop pollen that is patented and controlled by large out-of-state chemical corporations.
That's their number one, right out of the chute.
That's their number one finding. The second was, it is a violation of federal patent law for any farmer to save and plant or sell a seed that was produced from a genetically engineered pollen, even if that pollen drifts onto a farmer's field. So this is the whole point of contamination, right?
Right.
This undermines the farmer's ability to save the seed to use for next year's crop or to sell seeds on a lucrative commercial seed market.
Yeah, and Elise, when you were in here last time, and we talked about this on the phone, the sugar beet crop. Because I said, if you've got chemical companies that are coming in, that are planting test patterns, and they're planting test crops, if you would, why are they coming here? Why did we allow them to come here and infiltrate if they're going to be a problem for our farmers? And find out now the number of acreage, because I was thinking, okay, how much acreage is actually contested or being utilized by these foreign companies leasing land here in the valley, and the figure came up to about 20 acres.
Right. So.
Okay, so that's what the contention is all about, or at least where it started.
So it sounds little. You think, 20 acres. How bad could that be? So they're we like to say their footprint is very small. The carbon footprint, 20 acres, if that's what it is. But their pollen footprint is huge because the pollen drifting on either, way around them 3 miles either side, that basically infiltrates the whole valley. In fact, that was one of the findings that the panel had after speaking with Stephen Strauss, that the actually opposing side had coming down speaking on their behalf, did say during our talk that contamination in this valley in Jackson County is inevitable.
Right.
And yes, everything will be contaminated with GE pollen. So that we're really, we're put in the situation, as the panelists realize, they're put in the situation where they have to choose to support the local farmer or the big chemical corporation.
Yeah, exactly. We've got Elise Higley in. She's the director of Our Family Farms Coalition, and we're talking about Measure 15-119. Let's get a quick break in here. We'll come right back. More on the Sunrise Show in our debate series. Hoping we can get the issues opened up and you can get your dialogue in, your questions answered, and your concerns handled right here on the Sunrise Show. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX Newstalk 880. A little bold and extremely fun, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes. Here's Craig.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 20 minutes after the hour, I've got Elise Higley in this morning with Our Family Farms Coalition, and you can go to the website, ourfamilyfarmscoalition.org, and check out the full measure. And right as we were coming out of the break, we took a phone call, and Glenn, you're live on the air. Did you have a question for Elise or a comment?
I have a question, and maybe this could be explained to all of us. It appears that even if the GMO crops went away, GMO foods would still be available in the stores. If you go to the Grange Co-op, you'd be buying GMO alfalfa pellets. Or if you cross the county line, there would be GMO crops. So how significant is that issue that we're only talking about the growing of crops, but none of the products? And I'll let you answer that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
No, great question. Thank you, Glenn, for your call. We talked about this, a complete and total contamination. The scientists said that, and you wonder, okay, it's going to be contaminated. How much is too much, or how much is enough? And where do you draw the line? And that's what we're having a hard time doing right now, right?
So really this measure addresses the cultivation and growing of genetically engineered crops, like you said, Glenn.
But it doesn't...
So it doesn't include anything that would be on your shelves, and that's correct. What it does do is it protects farmers who are growing crops and making a living growing them. We know that because once this pollen contaminates fields next to it, it makes their crop, the non-GE farmers' crop, unsellable for two different reasons. One is because it's patented, so it's now illegal to sell. And then also marketability-wise, it makes it not sellable. So contracts have already been lost by farmers here right. because of even the threat of contamination. So like for instance, one of our farmers who lost, we'll give the example of the wheat, the $67,000 of wheat he lost last year. If he can say, hey, I live in Jackson County, this is a GMO-free zone for cultivation, he would have been able to sell his product. It just, it's to have that safe haven.
Protects it, right?
And then also the fact that we're one of the top 5 spots in the world to grow seed. That's why Syngenta's here. They know that. And so all of our seed crops are then protected from that. We'll be able to renew our contracts for seed crops. And that's a really big industry and really boosting the local economy.
Yeah, so our caller was asking about products, and he had a good point, is we can stop what's growing here, but we can't stop GMO products coming in and being sold on the shelves.
But that's a personal choice, so you can decide that, right?
Yeah, true.
It takes away, when you're growing the crop, you're taking away somebody's property and personal rights.
And I wonder if the caller, I wonder if he was thinking maybe along the lines of, in that world, perfect world of absolute non-contamination or contamination, if having a crate of GMO finished goods, bananas or apples.
There's no apples or bananas. So just...
Okay, so take something that's GMO.
So corn.
Corn would be
soy,
good, yeah.
Cotton.
Okay,
alfalfa,
so let's just take corn. So say a big 4x4 tote of GMO corn comes in. I mean, it's obviously coming into the store. It's not going to contaminate a farmer's field. It's not going to get back out. It's not going to... So it's just a matter of, where do you draw the line? So, and you wonder, I'm trying to focus, follow the money, the economic impact, and we've talked a lot about the county if that happens, but not so much for the farming. That's a huge, huge economic impact. And this is where my heart goes out to farmers, because they've kind of been sold that if they take on the patented seed, and isn't it Jared in the ad that's saying, hey, I've got a plot of both GMO and anti-GMO, and I'm going to cancel my GMO crop?
Correct. Yeah.
And I looking at the numbers, and the interesting part that I heard from Ray Seidler was that the output of he used corn, bushels of corn per acre, hasn't really improved, and they've gone from 27 bushels of acre of corn, 27 bushels of corn per acre in the 1800s, all the way up through World War I, and then from World War I to World War II, it increased to 160 bushels of corn per acre. But I don't know how that equates related to alfalfa. I mean, the crops that we have here, sugar beets, wheat.
So one thing to be certain of, and to know that the GMO crops that we talked about and all GMO crops that are available, they are genetically modified for one reason, and the one reason is to withstand Roundup or glyphosate or whatever pesticide that chemical company who paid for the science behind the patenting actually, that's what it's modified. It's not modified to have more yield. So even though at the beginning...
Right, because the yield hasn't changed much, is what they've been saying.
And at the beginning there might have been some arguments, or in different countries where there wasn't, cultivation farming going on. They saw a big boom in the farming industry, or, their crops, all of a sudden they got more yield. But that's because the whole farming process changed. It could have been any type of seed that they would have used, and suddenly you're cultivating with a tractor and other implements that now they're seeing more yield, or their seed was, maybe the seed that they were using before.
Yeah, and this has always struck me funny, is that the chemical companies are the ones, and they have the money, right? So if you follow the money, they have the money to invest in the seed patented process. So they spend that in patenting. I mean, they spend up, I talked to OSU Extension up there in Corvallis, and they said, you know what? It takes sometimes 15 years of non-stop research working on these seeds over and over and over and over again, and they might have 30 or so strains of seed, and they might have one after 15 years that come out and does what they want it to do. So they've spent 15 years in the lab, they've got all those different strains. Who could fund that but a large chemical company? Right,
and the other thing to really note about the chemical company and the patent part of it is all the science that you're able to see is actually, all of that is done through the chemical company's eyes. So you don't have no research is allowed here to be done because it is patented. So all the science is done, and the research that they call it is done through the chemical company. So what you see is what they want you to see.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's my point. It's kind of like there's caution there. I'm like, what? And it's disappointing, because you want to protect the other farmers that are like, say, alfalfa farmers, right? That they've got this GMO alfalfa. It's an interesting crop that the alfalfa, I didn't know this until this came out, that the GMO seed for alfalfa, they have a return between a 7 and 12 year yield on that planting. So if you're only given 12 months to remove any type of GMO alfalfa crop, they might have invested in an entire area, and they would have gotten 7 to 10 years, 7 to 12 years of return on that, and 3 cuttings. So frustrating.
I guess my part would be is that there are, I really don't think there are more than 2 other alfalfa growers besides Jared, who is already cutting down, his alfalfa. But, I empathize with somebody who made that decision to grow a GE alfalfa crop. The good news is that when they do convert over, they're going to get better yield, more money for their crop. And then you look at the other side, the 175 other farmers right now that aren't able to even grow what they want to grow either, because of
they're scared of
because of this GE products that are out here being grown. So you got to look at what are the majority of farmers growing here. Where is the business? And let's talk about the economic boosts. Let's talk about the economic gain we're going to have when this measure passes.
Yeah, and let's do that when we come back. We've got Elise Higley in the studio with us this morning. Of course, she's the director of Our Family Farms Coalition.org, and they're supporting this measure 15-119. And we want to talk more on this citizen statement, because it didn't come out in the paper this morning in its entirety, right, Elise?
It was pretty surprising, yeah. What we were told yesterday was the top 10 findings, the key findings on the pros and cons, what really after 3.5 days of intense scrutiny of this measure, the top 10 findings that they had were actually not quoted correctly in the Mail Tribune article. And
well, they've condensed them, I guess, right?
It's actually reworded.
Yeah,
it's not
reworded,
word for word.
right. It's not word for word. They took 10 bullets and made them into 6 and shortened the article. So we want to talk about that completely when we get back on the show. Yeah, don't miss this. We've got the top 10 bullets from the Jackson County Citizens Initiative, the Citizen Statement, coming when we come back. Okay, break, news, weather, all that stuff's happening. Hope you can stick with us. More on the Sunrise Show after we come back.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX Newstalk 880. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or go to kcmxam.com and go to the Talk to Us tab. Send us your thoughts. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 33 minutes after the hour. Glad you have decided to tune in. KCMX is hosting a debate series. Week 2 of week 4. We're smack dab in the middle of, and bringing in Elise Higley. She's the director of Our Family Farms Coalition. You go to the website, ourfamilyfarmscoalition.org. And you know, Elise, one of the things, a lot of folks are confused, voting yes or voting, yes is no, and voting no is yes. That's kind of tough.
Family farmers. Come on, Craig.
Exactly, right, exactly. And then the next thing is, as we look, I'm an analytical guy, and as I look at the measure as the ordinance, it's very difficult to read. Have you heard comments, pro or con, about that? The definition, it's pretty absolute.
Well, part of the measure is taken from the pear abatement measure, ordinance that's been in place for 25 years or so to protect pear orchards. So a lot of that language is coming from there. Most legal documents are harder to understand, but what we do know is, from looking at these panelists that dissected the entire measure for 3.5 days, that if you look at their top 10 findings, they're really in favor of the measure, and that is great to see that actually when the public, unbiased comes together, really gets information on it and takes away the TV ads and all the things.
Right.
And looks
the
at the
spin,
real,
looks
at the real facts. They came up in favor of the measure.
Well, I know that, because here's the thing. My goal has been to get the information out to the voters so that they can make a educated vote on their ballot, and I want them to get engaged in it. And it does make it difficult. You have to go step by step through it. The definition of organism and DNA and the, prohibition on it, it's you kind of step back and go, wow. Here's what I'm talking about is, could we have made something that was more user-friendly, that accentuated what we're trying to do as a community, rather than put this litigious type 8-page ordinance up? Was it necessary, do you think?
I think it was necessary to cover all the bases. A lot of the legalities in there are actually to protect and cover farmers that may be accused of growing a GE crop, such as, needing to get a search warrant or things like that. The good news is you don't need to know the science of GMOs and even really clearly understand them to know how you want to vote for the measure.
People are afraid about this search warrant issue. The Fourth Amendment, it talks about that, and it's like illegal search and seizure, and it's like, wow,
So this protects you from that.
It has an enforcement officer, but after that, you would need a search warrant. But they could get it if there's a claim.
If there was, you would have to really prove that there was an issue, and that's pretty easy because there's legal contracts that need to be signed for genetically engineered crops to be grown. So all you have to do, if somebody thought that was happening, you get that information, you subpoena that document from the chemical company. There's only a few of them that are actually giving contracts out, and I highly doubt that Syngenta or Monsanto or one of these big chemical corporations who have a lot to lose will come into this county and try and persuade somebody to break the law with them. It's just not going to happen. We've seen it in all the other counties that have measures in places. This has not happened. There's never been a case of a farmer or a chemical company breaking that ordinance. It has not happened. So that's great, right? So we can look at history as a fact.
So that's why this language is so strong then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into these top points. I have some other questions for you, but I want to get these top points because this is from this citizen's statement. And the key findings, they have 10 bullets. And we talked about the first two, but the third one, Elise, is any seed produced from genetically engineered pollen is considered legally patented and controlled by the chemical corporation that owns the patent on that crop. I mean, that's just kind of a statement. They have identified that as fact.
Right, these are all facts that they came up with.
Exactly. Number 4, this is a long-term public policy decision with impacts for every citizen of this county. Fact. Number 5, the Family Farms Measure 15-119 was proposed after family farmers were being forced to destroy seed crops after learning that a multinational chemical company had planted genetically engineered sugar beets near their fields. So family farmers were being forced to destroy. They just were afraid, right? They were afraid that their crop wouldn't be worth anything because it had been infected.
They went by the USDA guidelines of contamination.
Isn't that interesting that the USDA's now changed that whole thing, right?
It's interesting when they get pressure how they change regulations, yes. And they're actually, not enforceable regulations, but they were guidelines.
Exactly,
and they were,
Because that whole issue of, and this is what I was fearful, was to protect the organic farmers. And then USDA has rescinded that basic guideline. And so none of the organic farmers have lost their certification, even though the farmers that destroyed their crops thought they might lose their certification, correct?
It's not about losing certification or even whether you have certification or not. It's about whether you're losing business. So you can't,
true.
It doesn't matter if you have a certification or not if you can't make a sale. So.
Well, just exactly like China did when they backed off the wheat, the Oregon threat.
We've had it with rice, we've had it with wheat, we've had it with alfalfa,
So let's see here. Fact number 6 of the 10 findings. Let's see. Is that number 6? 1, 2,
There's
3,
no practical
4,
way to
5, 6. To stop genetically engineered pollen and seed from trespassing onto traditional farms, since there's no way to stop the wind and other sources of pollen. So we pretty much get that. The measure, this is number 7, measure gives the county and farmers, quote, the authority to enforce, unquote, the measure, but doesn't require any minimum level of enforcement. The county has full discretion on whether it will enforce the measure. In other counties that have had similar measures in place, there have neither been violations nor enforcement costs. And then number 8, the measure will be implemented by Jackson County Commission and administered and enforced by the county. And that's the problem that Commissioner Doug Bridenthal is saying, hey, I have no stand pro or con on the measure 15-119, but I'm forced to enforce it. I'm being held accountable if we have to implement a enforcement officer. And he's talking base rate of $250,000.
So we'll look back into the fact that they have the discretion whether to enforce it or not. So they could choose not to enforce it, just like they do with building codes or jaywalking or any of the other measures we have and laws that we have in place. And then we can look back at the history of all the other counties that have measures in place, have never had any enforcement issues whatsoever.
And I guess, for comparison study, since you've taken this from the pear orchard, the pear ordinance, if someone was to complain, and I know that was based on blight and folks not taking care of their orchards and having that problem, if someone were to raise that concern or that complaint, how would they handle that? I should have asked that to the commissioner, how would they handle that pear blight complaint if they don't have
the same way they would with this measure.
Right.
And they haven't had any problems or complaints for 25 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Until it affected
but then the
a
next
chemical
thing,
company.
If they did have a complaint brought to the county based off of GMO or something like that, they couldn't just not. If a citizen brings a complaint forward, They couldn't just not enforce it. They couldn't just not enforce the rule.
Well, they did when the farmer found the seeds Syngenta was growing near them. They said, "Sorry, we can't really do anything to help you. Why don't you go to the state?" And then
they deferred,
and then he went to the state, and the state said, "I guess you need to go to the feds." And then the fed said, "I don't know. Maybe you need to create a measure." And so that's how this measure, came to be.
Wow, interesting. All right, so let's see. 8. We read that. 9, point number 9, this is from the Jackson County CIR citizen statement. Point number 9, plaintiff will need to be able to document damages and prove conclusively that there was contamination. Sampling and testing may be required, but it would be the plaintiff's responsibility to fund such testing if needed. A defendant may have legal costs if they contest an enforcement action, and if they are found to have violated the measure, they may face cost of crop destruction and lost value of sales. If a defendant challenged the county enforcement, the county could have legal costs in defending its action in the case. And one of our callers actually brought this up, is why didn't they have in the ordinance something to protect against frivolous lawsuits?
Well, that's already part of Oregon's state law.
So the frivolous lawsuit's not allowed within state law?
Correct.
Okay,
exactly.
So I was not familiar with that. I wondered if that was part of if it was the case. So
definitely, we are protected against frivolous lawsuits in the state of Oregon.
So so the defendant, if he said, "Hey, this is totally bogus. He doesn't like me because my kids play the music too loud, or
right.
they're hot rodding around, or their dog got into our blah blah blah, and now he doesn't like me, so he's going to complain against my crop here." He can't just bring a frivolous lawsuit. They are protected.
Definitely.
Okay.
That person would end up having to pay for that.
Okay. And fact number 10 from this citizen statement, there is extensive misinformation on GMOs and their negative consequences. The large majority of mainstream science, as seen in extensive literature and endorsements by major scientific and health societies and reports, support the safety and value of available GMO crops and food. They do not support blanket acceptance nor rejection. So ultimately identifying all the misinformation on GMOs.
Right, and I think maybe on that side we didn't make, point clear enough, which is not really our point in this measure at all, talking about the science of GMOs, because that's not what this is about. This is about protecting family farmer. But it is important for people to know that the mainstream science, like I said before, is funded and done by the same chemical company that has a patent. Exactly. They're protected by this patent law, so they don't let you see anything they don't want you to see.
And this citizen statement, this comes from 20 individuals that, as a third party, correct? They have
yes.
no dog in the fight.
Correct.
And they are looking at this from an abstract point of view, and they want to see what this really was going to do. So the meat of it, after they took all the spin out of it. And
they had experts panel on both sides. Steve Strauss came and spoke to them from OSU, and they had a sugar beet grower coming from Iowa because they couldn't find anybody here because there's not any individual sugar beet grower here at Syngenta. So so it was interesting. It was really great to see, after hearing all of it, that they came out with these top 10, which are all of our arguments for the pro case. So we're really just so excited that people, voted yes on the measure, and we're just,
now,
hoping that this is the community's opinion.
Have we heard from Monsanto or Syngenta related to this? I mean, they haven't put out a statement or anything. They just can't. I mean,
they put in the money in the campaign on the no side.
Okay,
so I think that's their statement.
That's their statement. Okay. So, all right. Well, we've got Elise Higley in the studio with us, and of course the Our Family Farms Coalition. And we talked about this, Elise, and I want to come back and after the break and do this, is this model for farmers that have taken on GMO crops, and they've bought into the model of planting patented seed, using the spray once, rolling over their crop one time, and then they're good for the year. I mean, that seems to make sense for them, related to cost, diesel fuel, tractor time, labor costs, all that kind of thing. And so it's going to be really interesting to see from the economic point the difference. Is there a difference? And can they save money? What are the actual crops costing them? A numbers guy like myself, I want to see, okay, what's the crop cost, say, for a 20-acre parcel of alfalfa GMO versus a 20-acre parcel of non-GMO alfalfa? what's the yield and what's the cost? I know you can't answer that, but
I can
do you
tell
have
some
figures?
things. I don't have exact figures. There's other people that can. The hard thing is, like all patent laws, farmers are restricted to saying anything negative about this type of farming. So that makes it difficult. So you remember that
That's part of the contract.
That's part of the contract. One of the many things that you sign your life away for.
Wow. Interesting. You can be sued and...
Oh, yeah.
And
But let's look at people who aren't growing anymore, and people aren't, farmers are business people, and they do what's right for them, and we can see them. By far, the majority of farmers are not growing GE. If there's GE farmers out there, they haven't stepped forward. We know that there's less than 3 that I know of. Anybody else is welcome to step up and talk about it, and let's hash it out and work it out. But I know that this is going to be economically beneficial for every single farmer in Jackson County when this measure passes.
Wow. All right, we'll be right back. More on the Sunrise Show when we return.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX Newstalk 880. A little bold and extremely fun, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes. Here's Craig.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 49 minutes after the hour. Moving right along. Hope you're having a good day. It's going to be hot today. Get the water on the plants and everything else early. I had some flowers that kind of got dried out. I had to kind of like rescue them yesterday. Oh, no. But anyway, we've got Elise Higley in the studio with us this morning talking about this measure, this 15-119. And Elise, one of the things that a lot of the farmers and folks, quite frankly, are getting is this issue of land rights, one farmer or one group being able to dictate what the other group does. If you come into the room and you decide, okay, I'm going to grow GMO, you go on that side of the room, and you come into the room, I'm going to grow anti-GMO, I'll go on that side of the room, and now all of a sudden you have one group, because of the measure, being able to tell the other group what they can and can't do on their land. You put the shoe on the other foot. What would happen if the GMO farmers had said, "Hey, we've got to have all GMO"?
That's what's happening. Right?
Okay, but they're telling the
that's the point.
But they're telling the organic farmers, you either grow GMO or don't. And is that what you feel? I mean, it's happened by an accident situation. But what I'm saying is, the law this measure would turn into law that now would restrict people from doing what they want on their land.
This measure is to protect people from exactly what you're saying. Currently, right now, against our will, our crops are getting converted and changed over into genetically engineered crops. So that is the problem. And we're not legally allowed, because of patent laws, to sell them or to save our seed. So this is to protect us from that not happening. I really, this is not a farmer against farmer thing.
Really? You don't feel that way?
I really don't feel that way. I feel, I'm, like I said, if there's any GE farmers that, want to speak up, or they want to talk about this and figure out a way that, the goal is to have every farm be profitable and sustainable in this valley. And, I, along with, 175 other farmers, more than farms, but including all their farmers and farm workers, really believe that this measure is economically beneficial for everyone in the valley. This is about a big chemical company and local farmers. Let's look at who put the money in. Let's look at who's stepping forward. This money is coming in from outside the county. This is not economically viable. This type of agriculture is not economically viable in Jackson County. Let's look at Syngenta, the little plots that they're leasing all around, right? They are paying very little money leasing their land, and they're taking all of their seed outside and making millions and millions outside our county. What are they doing for our county? Compared to these 150 plus farmers that, well, actually, and much more than that even now, but that are, we live here, we work here, we hire local people, our kids go to school here, we pay our property taxes. These are the people that are the community.
Right.
And yes, there could be a handful of other farmers that are growing GE currently, but this is going to be so great for them too. And all of us want to work together. We're all here to work together and support each other.
Well, yeah, on this measure, I mean, I just wonder about forcing, and then this ordinance, had been told to me from the scientific aspect that such things as strawberries, because they're a genetically engineered crop, they wouldn't be grown, and cauliflower and asparagus and stuff like that. I mean, I know there's some pushback on that, but this is this all-encompassing when ultimately the complaint is, the sugar beet crop seed that's infecting, right, the farmers around them in these multiple plots of land that no one can really talk about.
So one, I want to just verify and clarify with you that the crops you're talking about are with chromosome doubling, not gene doubling. And so there's a difference. There's no GMO strawberries. There are no GMO cauliflower. The crops we're talking about, the only GMO available crops are corn, alfalfa, soy, cotton, and sugar beets.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about. Those are... There's no grass seed, there's no medical marijuana GMO, there's no strawberry GMO, there's no asparagus, there's no cauliflower. So they got to really understand that.
And this is the thing, this is the part that I wonder, could this get into court related to a chromosome doubling versus a gene doubling issue?
But who would nobody's growing GMO, any of those things you're talking about, so that it's not there.
But I'm saying it would have to prove that it's not under the guise of this measure.
Who would want to grow
I don't know.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's nobody growing it, so it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, well, we've got a strawberry farm right up the street.
Right, but they're not growing GMO strawberries. There's no such thing as GMO strawberries.
Okay, well,
so that's the thing.
That's what Dr. Martina Newell-McLaughlin had said that.
And then you have other scientists saying the exact that it's chromosome doubling, not gene doubling. There's no GMO. Ask her if there's GMO strawberries. She's going to tell you no. There are no GMO strawberries.
And see, that's where I'm talking about the whole hair-splitting thing of gene doubling versus.
This is about not fighting legalities. This is about protecting family farmers from crops that are GMO. And those are the crops that we talked about. And, the findings that the panelists found the same thing to be true. And the fact that there's these fallacies being put out there just hopefully makes people look even deeper into the other arguments and really following the money and where those things are coming out. They're reaching out with a fear tactic because they know that their argument is weak. And they took polls to find out what people care about, like cost, libraries, and they're using those to fight with people.
Exactly, and there's this desperation of times, as far as the money, how do you, if the county is forced to do that, and I see that as a viable argument. For our listeners in the last couple of minutes, Elise, this is the key, is getting this information out so that the listeners, the voters, can make their decision based off of as true of the information as we can give them, and that's my goal, so that we can get more people to vote, and then you just wonder, okay, are there farmers, obviously there's some issues there between what they choose to grow and if they've been sold a dog that doesn't hunt related to this GMO and this GMO seed and all these chemicals that go on, or is there a great, has the opportunity been good so far when you talk alfalfa farmers and their crop being so much better and so much cleaner? Yeah, I'm stuck on it.
So, we know for a fact, both sides will say that Jackson County is a narrow, windy valley, and that that contamination is inevitable from GE crops. So we have to really make a decision. Do we want to protect the majority of family farmers who are not growing GE? They know economically that's the best decision for their farm. Or do we want to surrender to this big chemical company and say, let's give up our valley. Let's give up one of the top 5 seed-growing regions in the world to this chemical company from Switzerland who's not allowed to grow in their own country. Do we want to give that up to them? That's really, for me, the question.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, Elise, thank you for coming in this morning. I appreciate it. It's a tough decision. Folks, you've got to stick on it.
We're celebrating the panelists of the Citizens Initiative Review and their findings, and we hope that people will dig deep beyond the Mail Tribune article and look on the website and find the 10 key findings and really see that they are in support of the measure.
Wow.
Thank you.
I know it's good. It's good. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. We'll see you.
Okay.
We'll be back tomorrow, everybody.
KCMX AM 880. Sunrise, where it matters what you think.